Angular 22 made Signal forms stable. This is video one of the full playlist where I build one real form from the ground up and use it to cover everything. The fundamentals that we'll be covering today, the nested groups, then dynamic arrays, and then async validations, everything a form has, okay? Every video builds on the same form, so by the end of the playlist, you will have seen every piece fit together. Today we'll look at how the models are created, how do you apply validations, the reading state, and finally submission. And these steps are basic steps which are used in every form, whether that form is simple form or a complex form. So let's start. In signal forms, your data is a signal. You hand that signal to a function called form, and it hands you back something called FieldTree. So we'll start by creating a signal forms which is looking something like this, which has a name, a description, project code, and whether the project is remote or not. Okay, and this is a simple Angular 22 applications. We'll start by creating a model for our application. So the model that will be a project intake model. Okay, so I'll create a model that is right here, protected, and then read only. Okay, because your model should not be updated, so and that should not be accessible outside of this class, so that is why we are using this line. And now I'll be creating the model, which is a model. Okay, now the model is, as I mentioned, this will be a signal model. So you will start by creating a signal model over here, which is signal. Now the signal should be imported from the @Angular core. Okay, now this signal takes a model, so I'll provide a model to it, which is the intake model that I have already created, which is in the models folder. Okay, now I have created the model. Now I want all of the fields to be added over here. So the fields are basically whatever there is in the model. So I'll add the project name, and the value will be default blank, and the another will be description, and the project code, right? And then the last one is the whether that project is remote or not, right? And the by default that will be false. Okay, that means the project is by default is not remote. Okay, let's start binding this model to our signal forms. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll add protected again, and then that will be a read only, and then the intake form. Okay, and this will be form, the function that should be coming from the @Angular form signals. And this will need a model that you have created just right now, which is our signal model. So I'll provide this model, this dot model. Okay, now it has our model. Now every field will be bind to that particular form. Okay, now you can also add validations, but let's just have this basic form and let's see if this is working or not. So once I have created this form, I'll go into our HTML and bind this form into all our fields. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll add a form tag over here at the top like this. Okay, now I have added the form. I'll add a class for the CSS thing, intake form. Okay, now I will not bind any form group over here because this is our signal forms. You do the form group binding inside your reactive forms, right? Not in the signal forms. So I'll add the first thing in the top, that will be heading, so the users should know what is this form. So I'll add intake form. Basically this will be a project intake form, right? Now I added the heading. Now I'll bind each of these fields to a particular DOM element. So I'll add the label. Okay, now the label will be having two things, the span and the input. So the span will be something like this, the project name. Okay, and the input will be something like this, the intake form, not the controls, because the GitHub Copilot understands that this will be a reactive form, but this is not. This is a signal form, so we will not bind it something like this. the field will be bound something like intake form dot project name. That's it. Okay, intake form dot project name, right? But the form control is not a valid directive over here. With signal forms, you must have the form field. Okay, now this form field should be imported inside your app.ts file, which is your inside your component decorator. So I'll add the imports over here. Okay, and this imports will be having the form field, and this form field should be again coming from the form field forms at Angular form signals. So I'll add over here. Okay, now we have the form field, and that form field binds this particular DOM element to this form field. Okay, the project name. Now let's add the same thing to the two other fields, which is our project description and the project code. Now the project description should be a text area, so I'll update it as a text area, and text area needs a closing tag. So I'll add a closing tag over here. Okay, like this, and the form field is project, not the project but the description. Okay, so now we have the project description field bound to this DOM element. Okay, now we'll be binding the project code, and project code should be something like this. Okay, the project code, and this will be a project code. Okay, now I want the easy remote should be a checkbox. So the GitHub Copilot suggested that this should be a checkbox with the form field bound as the easy remote. So I'll accept that. So that is true. And now we have this easy remote and everything bound. Now let's have a button, okay, at the bottom. So that button should be of type submit, because we will be having submitting this form, right? So we will not be having the ng submit right now, because later when we add validations, then we'll be having this ng submit on the top. But let's just have this form field and ng submit over there. Now I want to disable this button until every field validations are applied correctly, but right now I don't have any validations, so I'll remove this one. Okay, now the basic form is created. Now everything that you want inside a signal forms is already there. Okay, so you have bound your project name to this particular input, and you have description and text area and everything, right? So everything is working. Let's look at the browser and see how this is working. I'll start the server with npm start, and then I'll go to the browser. Let's refresh the screen, and now we have the form. Okay, so we have this project init form with the form, the project name, the project description, the code, and whether that is remote or not. Okay, so everything is there. Now let's add a class over here so that it looks good inside the browser. So I'll add the class as field, and I'll add the same class to every label over here, and then this one, and same goes for this one. But this is again a different kind of input, so this is a checkbox. So I'll add the field over here. Now if you go into the browser, this is looking good. Okay, so project name, the description, the code, and all that, right? So I haven't added the placeholders, but that is fine for now, right? Now this is our signal form. Now let's add validations to this signal form. What validations do I need? I need that the project name should be required. User should not be able to submit this form until they enter the project name. Okay, and then I'll add the validations to the project description. That the maximum description can be applied is of 500 characters. Okay, so let's add these validations inside our form where we have defined our form, right? The signal form. So here we have defined our form. Now let's apply the validations. I'll go to the form, and this form will have the second parameter, and this second parameter gets the current schema, whatever schema the current signal form has, and this will be having a project a function definition, right? And these function definitions will be having this particular schema. This schema is again the form, right? This particular form. Okay, now I want to apply required validation to my project name, so I'll add the required over here. Required, that should be coming from the add signal forms, right? So required validation is added. Now which field do I need to make a form as required? So I'll add schema dot project name. Okay, and that is added. Now once there is an error on this project name, what message should I show? I can just apply it over here like this message, and the project name is required, right? That's it. That is what I want. So I'll add this message over here, right? Now I don't want the required validations for the description and project code. Those are optional fields, but I want to have a minimum character for the project name. Okay, so I'll add the min length, that should again be coming from the signal forms. So I'll add the min length for the project name as 3, and this should be for the project name, not the project code, and the project name must be at least 3 characters long. Okay, now this min length must be imported from again the signal at Angular form signals right here. Okay, the min length is applied. Now I want to apply max length to the description, so I'll add the max length to the schema dot description right here. Okay, and that will be a 500 characters, and this will be my message. Description must be less than 500 characters, so I'll accept that, whatever GitHub Copilot is suggesting me. So I'll import this max length from the again the forms signals. Okay, now I want the project code should be minimum of 3 to 20 characters with letters inside it and numbers and or dashes. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just enter over here. Okay, and from there I'll add the pattern. Now this pattern is accepting the regex, so I'll add the pattern over here. So I'll just add schema dot project code. Now what pattern do I need? I need a regex over here, so I'll add this one. Okay, so I'll add the caret symbol over here, and within that this project code can have the capital cases, the small cases, okay, or the numbers. Okay, so I'll add 0 to 9 over here. Now this can also have dashes, so I'll add a dash over here. Okay, now this should be a minimum of 3 to 20 characters, so I'll add 3, and the maximum of 20 characters over here. Okay, now with that I'll add this dollar symbol, and that's it. This will complete our regex. Now what message do I need? I need that the project code must be alphanumeric between 3 to 20 characters. Okay, so I'll just accept that message, and alphanumeric with the dashes. Okay, so this is our project code, and now the pattern again should be imported from the signal forms. So this pattern is imported. Now we have these validations applied. Now how do you use these validations inside your HTML template? So I'll go to our app.html template, and I'll check if the project name or the project description or any of my field gets the validations error. I'll show that validation error below that particular field. So on the project name, I'll go and add a condition if there is an error on this project name. So what I'll do, I'll just show that message over there, right? So I'll add intake form. Now this intake form is the main form that you have created inside your component TS file, and this will be getting the project name, all of these fields, right? All of the fields that you have inside your this form. Okay, the project name. Now when I call this project name as a function, I'll get that state. Okay, the state, that means the touch, the dirty and all that, right? So I'll just call this project name as a signal. Okay, and on that project name I can get all of those state. Okay, what current state is for that particular field. So I'll add touched over here, right? If user has touched this field and if there is an error inside this particular project field, okay, inside this particular form field. So I'll add the intake form dot project name. Okay, now on that project name I'll again call that form field, right, and I'll get all of the errors as an array over here. Okay, and I'll check if this errors has length, that means there is at least one error in this errors array. So I'll add that condition over here, right, and within that condition I'll just add the error, which is our span. I'll add the class, right, the class should be something as error. Okay, and here I'll just bind that particular error. Okay, this particular error should be coming from that field, from the form that you have defined inside your form component. Okay, so I'll add the errors of 0, that is intake form dot project name, and then the errors, all of the errors array, and from that array I'll just show the first error. So I'll accept that. Okay, now the validations are applied and the validations are shown if there is an error in this particular field. Okay, now we'll check the validations for the description one. The same thing, I'll add the condition and I'll just copy this condition from here in below the description text area and paste it, and instead of the project name I'll just replace the project name with description. Okay, and I'll call that particular description field. Okay, and if that description field is touched, okay, and if there is an error, right, I'll check that if there is an error inside this description field array, I'll just show the first error from the description field. Okay, the first element of the particular array will be an object. Okay, so you must show the message property on that particular first field. Okay, the first element. So I'll just show the message over here, and the same goes for the description one. Okay, and for the project code is again the same thing. I'll add the error there, I'll add this condition below the project code field, and I'll just replace this thing with the project code, and I'll call that particular field. Okay, and the same thing goes for the checkbox, but we don't have any validations applied while defining our form for the checkbox. Okay, so we'll keep at is it right now. Now we can add the disabled condition over here, right? If the form is invalid, we can show the disabled state to the submit form, right? So I'll add disabled over here. Okay, and then I can add the intake form. Now here also, as we have seen for the fields, that is the project name, we were calling that particular signal, okay, to get that state, right? Here also we need to call this particular form to get the state of this form. Okay, so we'll add the parenthesis over here, and then if that is invalid, okay, so I can just show the disabled state for this form. Okay, now if you see, we have applied the validations as well inside our form, and let's check this inside our browser, and we have this form. Okay, now let's touch that and keep, you see the error is shown over here, right? And the same will go for the description as well. And if you see, I'll just add something over here, and that validation is not applied because that it can also have numbers, right? Now let's add the symbol that was not applied there. So you see, I get the error as project code must be alphanumeric dash and the 3 to 20 characters, right? So this is how you can apply validations inside your signal forms. Now let's submit this form and let's look at how you get the data which is entered by the user inside your form. So I'll add the onSubmit function inside our app.ts file. I'll go app.ts file, that is our component.ts file, and I'll add the onSubmit over here. Okay, once the user has submitted this form, this function will be called. Okay, so I'll add the onSubmit over here. Now to show that this form is submitted and to show a different page to the user, we can have a variable over here so that the form just hides and we show that the form is submitted in a different page. But we'll not do that. We'll just console the latest data which is entered by the user. Okay, so inside this onSubmit function, I'll call the submit function. Now this submit function is the function that is there inside this Angular form signals. Okay, so I'll just import that, and I'll just pass this form, the form that we have created, to this submit function, and I'll add this dot intake form. Okay, and then I'll add the function which is called on this submit function after this form is submitted. Okay, so I'll add the async over here. Okay, and I'll just call this function. I'll just define this function which will be called after this form is submitted. Okay, now once this form is submitted, I'll do something like this, try, and I'll catch the error, whatever error there is inside the submission of this form. Okay, and I'll just console that error. Okay, error can submit this form, and I'll just console that error. Now I get that particular intake form and the submission as well. I can just console whatever data is there inside our developer console. I'll just add form submitted successfully, and then this dot model. This dot model is the model that we have created over here, the signal model. You do not need anything on the intake form, right? You just pass this intake form to the submit function, and this dot model will have the latest data, right? Whatever data that you have. Okay, now this submit intake form is not required, because if you are just consoling your form data, you can directly add this console log in the on submit button. Okay, but right now we are submitting this form. Okay, so this is required, the submit function is required, right? If you don't want to submit anywhere, and if you don't want to wait for that API call to be completed, you can directly add the console over here, just like this. I'll just copy and I'll just paste it over here in the on submit. That's it. You can do this as well, but right now let's say I'm calling name API and I want to wait for that API to finish, and then I'll just show or redirect the user to some other page. Then this function, the submit function, is required with the intake form that you have created. So let's go into the browser and see how this works. Okay, I'll open the developer console, and this console is open. I'll add the project name, let's say Falcon, and description. Okay, description, that's it, and the project code FAL001, that is 01, and this project is remote. I'll submit that. Okay, but this submit is again will not work. Let's submit that. If you see, we don't have anything over here, right? Why? Because we didn't add the submit function, the on submit, whenever that particular form is submitted, right? We have this submit function over here, right? And we have this the button as well, right? But the form, every signal forms requires the on submit on the form tag. Okay, so I'll add the on submit over here. This will not be ng submit that you do for the reactive forms, but this will be the on submit, right? So I'll add the submit right over here, not like this, submit. Okay, and I'll add the on submit form, the function that we have created, right? This function, and I'll also prevent the particular event which is submitted from the form, okay, by using the prevent default. And now if I go to a browser, and if I now again add the Falcon over here, okay, and add the description, the code like this, and this one. Now if I click on submit, you see the data, and that data is all the data that user has submitted through your form. Okay, if you see, we have the project name as Falcon, that is being entered over here, and everything, the is remote is true, right? If I remove the is remote checkbox, okay, and if I submit the form, you see the is remote should be as false, right? So this is how you can work with your signal forms. Let's see the hidden edge cases, and these are the fundamental level mistakes, the ones that hit you before you have added the second form field or the second form group or an array. Every form field inside your form, that is inside your model, requires a real initial value. Okay, you should not add the undefined or null over here. Why? Because if you add the null over here or undefined over here, the field will infer that particular type and you will not be able to add the different values to that particular field. Okay, so that is the gotcha number one. And second is that if you forget the form field on the top of this imports inside this add red component decorator, then your form will not work and you will not get the error, but your form will not work. Okay, so you might be wondering why your form is not working. So this import is required if you need to bind your form field to particular DOM element. Now the third one is that don't mix the ng model or reactive form directives with the form field, because form field fully owns the inputs, values, binding and event handling. Adding the ng model or the form control name or the value alongside on the same element creates two system fightings over the same input, that is the reactive forms and the signal forms fighting for the particular same input values, and you will see stale values. Okay, and double firing changes events or Angular throwing a directive conflict error at runtime. Okay, so you should pick one form system per form. Okay, so for every form just pick one form system, that is if you want a reactive form then go for the reactive form, if you want the signal forms then just go for the signal forms, for all of these in that form, for all of the fields for that particular form. Okay, don't mix match everything over here and there. Now the fourth thing is that as I mentioned earlier, you should just to know the state of that field or to know the state of that particular form, you should call that particular field or form. Okay, so by calling you will get the state details and you will get all of those states for that particular field. Okay, so if you add the intake form dot invalid over here directly, this will not work. Okay, so this will just show you the error that this is not valid. So you must call that particular form by adding parentheses over there. Okay, every checkbox should have a boolean value assigned to it. So if you are creating a form inside your if you are creating a model, the signal model, and then if you are having a checkbox, then that particular checkbox field should have a boolean value, right? You should not add the string value or the numbers to that particular field, right? So this is the thing that is needed for a better form management inside your Angular applications. So that is the full foundation: a signal as your model, the form wrapping it with the validators attached to the schema paths, form field for binding, the call it to read it pattern for every field and the root, and the submit handling the touch and validations, and async action inside your submit function call. So in the next video, the same form gets a nested address group. That's where conditional validations and the cross field rules actually comes in. A fields rule depending on another field or hiding a whole section based on that particular toggle. So the nested forms is basically required for most of the forms inside many Angular applications. So we'll be covering that in our next video. So the full code for the form of this today's version will be provided in the description of this video. Subscribe to Frontend Force so you don't miss the upcoming videos of the signal forms. See you in the part 2.